Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Vault. Jersey Joe Archino back here, and we're kind of going to backtrack a little bit and go back to a segment I don't think we quite finished yesterday. Is LeBron James a coach killer? Those storylines have been written over and over again since the firing of David Blatt. And all this time, the only source that I think is trustworthy in the NBA, the only one that I always know is going to be 100% accurate, he's talking to the right people, he's not going to put things out there before they're actually true, is Brian Windhorst. To me, Brian Windhorst is the most trusted source in basketball. I'm always going to take his word before I take anyone else's. So to me, now he has finally spoken about this whole David Blatt thing, I will read you exactly what he said. He said, "All I know is what I saw, and I saw a guy who completely was unable to get even a modicum of respect from a majority of his players. And I also saw star players and veteran players, not just LeBron. Okay, we know LeBron had issues with him, but basically any player that had any sort of veteran status in the league, more than Joe Harris and Matthew Dellavedova, all the veterans didn't like him. Either he wasn't able to win over about anybody." Now, that at its core, I think, is where this whole David Blatt thing comes down to. There was some inability and some disconnect with the veterans on this roster. Now, I'll go back to this point. David Blatt accepted this job under the circumstances that he was going to be growing this young NBA team. Obviously, David Blatt had never coached a day before in the NBA, had a tremendous amount of success overseas coaching Maccabi Tel Aviv, and then he was going to come over to Cleveland, take this roster full of very young talent, just coming off getting the number one overall pick in Andrew Wiggins, and he was going to develop this talent, maybe become in the 8th spot in the weak Eastern Conference, and continue to build this team. But that instantly changed overnight when LeBron decided to come back. Then expectations changed from let's win a couple games and maybe make the playoffs to championship or bust. The whole David Blatt timeline kind of was thrown out of whack without his own doing. Now, obviously, he got them to the finals. He got them to a tremendous record, sweeping the Atlanta Hawks in the Eastern Conference Finals without Kyrie Irving. David Blatt did a lot of great things, but even behind all the winning, it seems like there was just some inability to connect with the veteran players. And maybe part of that is, look, I know LeBron has been very defensive about this type of thing, about being labeled a coach killer. He doesn't like it. It rubs him the wrong way, and rightfully so. I mean, nobody wants that label attached to them. And one of the things I thought that was very interesting that he said is, he mentioned, which we all know, it's no surprise, he has a genius level basketball IQ. He said, "Do you guys want me to just turn off my perfect basketball brain?" Not those exact words, but in that line of thinking or with those words. And that's one thing I think is interesting. LeBron is so smart and sees the game so well. And sometimes when you do that and you're the best player on the planet, you're going to have a difficult time with a guy like David Blatt who's never coached in the NBA. There are adjustments. It's difficult to be at the helm of a basketball team when you've never done it before at the highest level. David Blatt was learning, making adjustments, learning how to be a coach at the highest level. For LeBron, I don't think that he was able to kind of get around that sometimes. LeBron is a genius when it comes to the game. He's been around a lot of coaches. He's been around a lot of top coaches with his time with USA Basketball. And for that reason, I think it was very hard for him at times to really connect with David Blatt. And clearly, LeBron got his wishes. David Blatt was gone. And although there's no official reports that LeBron had anything to do with it, I think if we use common sense, you know the Cavaliers aren't going to part ways with a guy if it's going to make LeBron unhappy. They're in the contest right now of doing everything possible to avoid what happened, what made LeBron leave the first time. He was not happy. They didn't have a clue how to run their organization the first 7 years he was there, and that's why he left. They couldn't get him the right coaching staff. They couldn't get him enough supporting players. The culture of basketball was not good enough to retain a talent like LeBron James. But they kind of got it together through losing and got a tremendous group of players, which piqued LeBron's interest again, and then he came back. What would have been interesting to see is if LeBron had come there and he had had his say and his input, which they would have deferred to him for everything. I mean, if we look at LeBron James, he basically, without even, we don't need to have reports to say that he doesn't influence front office decisions. He does. Kobe does. LeBron does. Every major star player who's ever played this game has impacted front office decisions. The Miami Heat drafted Shabazz Napier because why? LeBron James tweeted out he thought he was the best player in the draft. They were in the business at the time of keeping him at all the costs. They draft Shabazz Napier because of it. Cleveland, they drafted Andrew Wiggins, who we all thought was going to be a phenomenal basketball player. Then at the end of the day, they trade him because why? LeBron James thinks Kevin Love is a better piece to help him win now, and they make that trade. All front office decisions, all coaching staff decisions, they don't get made if LeBron isn't behind them. There were more reports that, he did try to push Eric Spoelstra out of Miami, but Pat Riley would not have it. That was his guy. And again, we don't know if for certain if that's true. Maybe it was. I could see it. I mean, look, again, you always have to go back to this line of thinking. LeBron is one of the smartest players the game has ever seen. He's always going to be a step ahead of other people. He's always going to be thinking his own way. And if he doesn't like what's happening, he's going to voice his opinion to somebody about it, and he's going to make his influence felt. That's just the way it is. And I think you always have to remember that. But another report about this one, I was waiting for Brian Windhorst to come out and say something about this. I don't think there's any surprise. We all kind of knew the veterans. Something wasn't clicking 100% right with David Blatt. I still didn't like the move. I thought David Blatt, again, you're in 30-11. You're in first place in your conference. You just brought your team to the NBA Finals. I think that this situation should have worked. Obviously, I'm going to do another segment based on what we've seen from the first 3 games of Tyronn Lue. But, he hasn't done anything in this league yet. It's going to be a lot of questions still remaining to be answered for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And for LeBron James, it has certainly been a trying couple of days and even more interesting stuff. But, to kind of sum it all up, I don't fault LeBron for being a coach killer his first 7 years because, let's be honest, the Cleveland Cavaliers organization didn't have a clue what they were doing. He was right to leave that situation. They had instability in the front office. They had instability trying to draft players, and they had instability trying to find a coach who knew what he was doing. He leaves. He wins 2 titles. He makes it to 4 finals, so 2-2. And he does a lot of great things and really elevates to what we always knew that he should have been in a championship caliber player. Now he's back, and right now, still no ring, but still a lot of questions and a lot of answers that remain to be in the process of happening. But until we get to those, I'll be back in Jersey. Joe Archino here with the Sports Vault. You can follow me on Twitter at Joe Archino, on Instagram, Jersey_Joe_Archino, and I'll be back next time.